All right, what's a bigger storyline for you coming out of the first spring practice? By the way, Sark has already said first spring practice is really just a show me what you got a scrimmage, I should say. The first spring scrimmage is a first kind of show me what you got. I don't know why I keep saying spring. Scrimmage, training camp scrimmage. And he said the second scrimmage, that'll be the scrimmage, it's more of a depth chart scrimmage. And this first scrimmage, there are several storylines that the insiders are pointing to because it was a closed scrimmage. Only the families of all the players actually were invited to the scrimmage. And, of course, we're based on some insider reports, so shout out to Horns 24/7. Got some of these reports from there. Shout out to our friends over at Inside Texas doing a good job. Got some reports from those guys, too, and Orange Bloods. Got a couple, so kind of gathered up and piecemeal different reports because we got a lot of sites doing a really good job. So Arch Manning and his wow plays, apparently, because Arch Manning looked really, really good. So is that a bigger storyline or the Alfred Collins awakening? Apparently, Alfred Collins actually had a great scrimmage, too. The different first-team O-line, a change-up in the first-team O-line. A.D. Mitchell hype, because it continues. Every time there's a practice report or now a scrimmage report, A.D. Mitchell hype is pretty much a given every time we hear anything. The running back room rounding into form. Anthony Hill, the prodigy, looking like a prodigy, or the defense forcing turnovers and getting takeaways. For you,
for storylines,
what will be the bigger for you? Because I think everybody's got something that they're emphasizing and focus on. Out of all those that I mentioned, and there are others we'll get to, which one of those to you is the most intriguing?
For me, that's easy. It's Alfred Collins. I mean,
okay.
Because, A.D. Mitchell, as you mentioned, is the headline of every practice report you see. I mean, I think
that's consistent.
I think we can start to just say that, because as we were talking about the Cowboys, right? What we saw from DeMarvion Overshown and Deuce Vaughn on Saturday, that's been the report in all 3 weeks out in Oxnard.
Yep.
Like a whole camp. Demo and Deuce Vaughn are showing up. They're just making plays. That's been the A.D. Mitchell report since the Longhorns started practicing, that A.D. Mitchell is one of the best players on the field every day.
Since the spring.
Yeah, since the spring. We saw him in the spring game.
Yeah.
So you can start to say, okay, who are your best players? Kelvin Banks at left tackle is one of your best players. You can believe in him if he stays healthy. A.D. Mitchell is one of your best players at wide receiver. Byron Murphy on the defensive tackle. He's a guy that just shows up. Jalen Ford's a really good player at linebacker. You got some knowns, right? You got known commodities, and I think A.D. Mitchell has joined that known commodity conversation. And I also know that Arch Manning is going to be a backup quarterback. He may end up, maybe he beats out Malik Murphy to be the backup if he continues to perform like he did on Saturday, because all accounts were that he was more decisive and more immediate with his reads and distributing the ball than Malik Murphy was. But Quinn Ewers had a fine day. Quinn Ewers is going to be the starting quarterback for Texas in 19 days, and he's going to be your starter. So, to me, the Alfred Collins story is huge, because I think what can separate Texas from being you talked about it last week, Rod, behind the burnt orange curtain.
Yeah.
How do you go from being a really good, solid defense that finishes in the top 30 and scoring defense in the country to being a
elite
top 10 or 15 type of defense, an elite defense? Alfred Collins. Alfred Collins becomes that kind of guy who can change games from the line of scrimmage, because Byron Murphy's going to be there. You feel good about Barron Sorrells, Tavondre Sweat, and the rotation at D tackle is good. But, Alfred Collins comes with that special tag. He's got that little extra that is a game-changer kind of thing.
He's got physical dimensions you cannot teach.
Yes, the long arms, the big body.
That you cannot
and
teach.
If the lights come on or the motor's cranking, that guy can change the game. That guy can become, we talk about finishing, not just pressures but sacks.
Yep.
Not just sacks but turnovers. Not just close to turnovers but actually taking the ball away. Alfred Collins can help you do that.
Totally agree with you. Here is the report. Shout out to friends over at Horns 24/7 for this particular one. When asked who was the best defender on the day, the answer was Alfred Collins.
Yeah.
They started with, at least the source here said, started with Byron Murphy. Tavondre Sweat would sub in to replace Ethan Burke to match personnel, but did say that Alfred Collins may have had maybe the best defender on the day overall.
Yeah, played inside and outside when they needed him to be, as an outside shade. And you mentioned the other name that I heard and read a lot about was Ethan Burke. Ethan Burke, the former lacrosse player at Westlake, who's 6'7". But football IQ is something Sark has talked about with Ethan Burke, and a guy that can really get after the quarterback, because that's really the biggest question on the Texas defense for me. Is I think they're deep at safety. I think they've got they're really good up the middle, like you talk about, Rod, the central nervous system of their defense, tackle, linebacker, and safeties. I think they're solid there. They're looking for a corner opposite Ryan Watts. But, man, I think if you tell me this team's going to have a pass rush and be able to finish quarterback sacks this year with guys like Ethan Burke, Alfred Collins, Barron Sorrell, with Byron Murphy in the push in the middle, this defense can go from good to really good to maybe even great.
Yeah, they had 27 sacks. I believe PK, when he spoke to the media, said they missed 13 sacks. So you're trying to cash in on maybe half of those that you missed last season. That could end up being some game-changing plays. He said that they had 14 takeaways last season, and I believe he said they missed out on 20 plus opportunities to get other takeaways for different reasons. I don't know how they calculated, but either way, it does show you that there's a lot of room for improvement for the defense. And they were a good defense last year. But we talked about the splash plays, the havoc plays. You need more guys who are going to create havoc plays. That are your tackles for loss, your sacks, your forced fumbles, your interceptions, your PBUs. Jalen Catalon is one of those guys who can take that next step. I saw a clip of him getting an interception in one of their practices. So that's a guy you got to count on to be a playmaker. You need more playmakers on defense, not just Jalen Ford. And hopefully Alfred Collins can be one of those guys. He's taken that next step. And one of the other reports that I thought were really interesting is, about the defense forcing turnovers overall. There was a forced fumble. Shout out, I think it's Liana Lafau was the one that forced the fumble against Jatavion Sanders. So that's a good report. The 2 interceptions, because Malik Murphy threw an interception. Quinn Ewers, I believe, threw an interception. Even though you don't want your quarterbacks to be throwing interceptions, both of those, I think Quinn Ewers, they say, also threw 2 touchdowns, had a good day. But there was an interception, so it shows you the defense, they're starting to be a little bit more opportunistic and make plays. You gotta be a defense that's able to take the football away. That's another step Texas can take. They only had 14 last year. I mean, that's a pretty low number for a really good defense like Texas. Considering they were top 10 in pressures, those pressures are supposed to be either converted into sacks or they're supposed to be converted into more takeaways because it forces the opposing quarterback to make mistakes under duress. And for some reason, something's lost right there in translation for Texas. They're not converting those pressures, even though they were second in the country, but Pro Football Focus says, behind, I believe it's Clemson. They're not converting those into sacks because they were second to last among the top 10 in pressures and sacks, and they're not converting those into takeaways because they had 14 takeaways, who are at the bottom of the Big 12 also in takeaways. Well, so that's what they're trying to rectify defensively.
And for folks who don't have the insider access, I also saw where Xavier Worthy didn't participate. He might be dealing with something minor, but they're probably precautionary with X-Man.
Nah, we don't need to see anything from X-Man.
And there was a report from Anwar Richardson over at Orange Bloods that Jordan Whittington may have left the game with something with his arm. And I'm sure we'll get more from Sark on any injuries that have happened so far. Sark will be available this afternoon. We didn't hear from Sark after the scrimmage. The Longhorns will practice again this afternoon, and then Sark will meet the media. So we'll have more on any injuries with Sark today, and that we'll be talking about tomorrow morning. But didn't look like X-Man did much. But
it's good. You got a deep wide receiver room. You need to see those young guys anyway. You've already seen X-Man.
But also the reports that Isaiah Nair had a great scrimmage. That Isaiah Nair is another potentially guy that you can really rely on at the receiver position.
Jonte Cook.
Yeah.
Once again, making plays and had a touchdown. So it looks like the wide receiver room, and hope Jay Witt is okay, because Jay Witt was a great weapon when he was durable and able to stay healthy last season. But the beauty of it is you got a lot of insurance plans and contingency plans at wide receiver. You got a lot of versatile weapons now at wide receiver. So an injury hopefully doesn't last long to any wide receiver. It won't decimate. Well, other than X-Man, it won't completely decimate the wide receiver.
I think that's why they bloated up. And back to the Arch Manning thing you asked about. The reports where Arch Manning looked good, decisive, but also had like a 50 or 60-yard run.
50-plus. I've heard different reports that say 55, 50-plus yard run, whatever.
Long run where he's faster than you think. That Arch Manning was not tracked down by anybody. And Arch Manning got the
fastest of the quarterbacks, right?
Maybe. I think he probably would be.
Because Malik Murphy's not fast.
He's big,
but he ain't fast.
Arch is, remember, Arch's a basketball player.
So Arch
good athlete.
He's the most athletic of the quarterbacks? Is that what we're saying?
Looks to be.
Wow.